what are some top 3 challenges or mistake that the married couple in this entrepreneurial journey we often will encounter?
I'd say one of them would be boundaries. It's like all of a sudden the work just takes over the family and your life, and then there's no boundaries because, you're not having fun, you're not doing date night. In my experience growing up with the entrepreneur family, the business became the mistress. And so as a child, it's easy to resent it. So I'd say one of them is boundaries.
Yeah. And the very common thing, and these are all transferable skills. It works in business and it works in marriage. But another issue is their inability to resolve issues and make a decision to move forward. The growth of the business seems to be stunted by their inability to make decisions together. And so because of that, you got a stalemate.
Mhm.
And then it becomes a competition between one or the other, and you're digging your heels in because you think, I think I'm right, or Kaylee thinks she's right, or whatever. And if you're noticing, right, this happens at home too, right? But it also affects business. So that inability to make a unified decision is one of the top challenges as well. Number 3.
I'd say conflict resolution. It kind of goes along with what you're saying, because if you're not able to resolve things, they just kind of slide it under the rug, and then it gets higher and higher and higher, and it becomes more things that you can't talk about. And you get stuck in that spot where you're not able to move forward, because if we're on the same page, we can be a strong couple moving pretty quickly.
Yeah, and
unity.
It helps in business too. I mean, there's always opportunity to resolve an issue, right? Customer issues, employee issues, vendor issues, and of course, husband and wife and family and all that. So being able to resolve conflict and getting on the same page and really align yourself with the other person is obviously going to be beneficial both in marriage and business. And so, but that becomes an issue. But when you're working together as husband and wife, it seems like that conflict becomes greater because now it's a personal issue because you're married to them, right? It's almost like you shared earlier about your husband trying to teach you skiing, and you just argue with him all the time. But his students are fine, right? Or if you heard it from another instructor, a third party, you're fine. But for some reason, when we're together as husband and wife, we can't. We just this little issues that normally we can resolve when it's somebody else, we have a harder time because it's your spouse.
I want to ask you as experts, right? So what would you say, if now they may be among the audience, there's husband and wife or both, they are listening to this podcast or watching the YouTube video, they say, hey, we are kind of facing some struggles. What you guys just mentioned, our marriage situation is a little bit, kind of a lot of friction recently. So what would you say, maybe give us some 3 simple steps that can at least help them to get started and to get back to the right track?
Well, I think the first thing is get help. I think, with many counselors, you succeed. Mm-hmm. And too many times we wait to get help, and we wait until it's almost too late. You talk to counselors and they say, majority of the couples that come in for help, they basically have one foot out the door, and it's almost impossible because they're already focused on leaving. With our cars, preventive maintenance, we take our tune-ups, get oil changes and all that. But for some reason in marriage, we think we're just going to fix it, right? And especially if you're already at that point where there's a lot of tension that you don't see how you're going to fix it, trying to fix it on your own can be very challenging. And we went to counseling before we even got married. We went to 2 years of counseling. I mean, I only knew her for 4 dates. And then she says, oh, you should go to counseling. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? We haven't even had our first argument. And so you have to read the book for the rest of it. But in hindsight, all the issues, the typical issues that marriages struggle with, we dealt with it before we even got married with a counselor that was like the coach in a sense, to not just help us work out the present issues, but along the way, develop tools that once we get married, we rely on the tools to resolve issues, because there's always going to be conflict, right? You're never always going to be in perfect agreement. And so there's always going to be that opportunity for that. And that foundation with the counseling, I mean, the tools that we're using with our clients and in the book, it's the stuff that we learn in counseling. And we lean on it all the time because, again, there's always opportunities like green chilies. And so that's number one.
I'd say, kind of to piggyback with what you just said, be coachable, whether it's in your business and your marriage, because I remember one time we had a client early on that had been in business for like 40 years. And every time we came up with the marketing strategy, they're like, oh no, that'll never work. That'll never work. That'll never work. Well, unfortunately, they ended up going out of business because they just didn't want to change. And change can be challenging. But at the same time, if what you're doing is not working, and I'm speaking to myself included here, sometimes you need to get help and try something different and just have somebody coach you through it. Like you, Kelly, you hold your clients' hands and coach them to the next level and help them to succeed.
Yeah. And then I think number 3 is what we help ourselves and our clients, we help them create rules of engagement. And so it's in a discussion that even could potentially become an issue. We have what we call inbounds and out of bounds. What are things that are allowed to do and say in a discussion, and what's not allowed? So what we mean by that is whenever a disagreement becomes a conflict, it's because we're triggering the other person. And then that trigger creates a defense mechanism, and I trigger back. Because we know how to trigger the other person, right? Especially husband and wife. We know what buttons to hit, right? And we're not rational. We're upset and we just want to hit back. And so the out of bounds part of the rules of engagement are all those triggers that are not allowed to do. There's certain words, there's certain actions, right? Like if we get in an argument, I'm not allowed to just walk out the door. But if I do because I need to cool off, there is an agreement in there. And inbounds is if I need to leave the room to cool off, I say, honey, I still love you. I love you. I just need to cool off, and I'll come back in 30 minutes and we'll talk about it. So we have to define, number one, I still love you. I'm not going to run out on her. I'm not just upset and I'm going to run out on her. And we are going to talk about this, and this is when. Because in her household growing up, leaving the door, walking out the door meant they may not come back.
Right. And it happened all the time.
Because it happened with her dad. And so there's that innate fear that if I walk out the door, that's the trigger. So I have to understand that trigger and what that means based on childhood and respect that. And then also not leave her hanging that when are we going to talk about it? Even if you do need to cool off, when are you going to talk about it? So we have to agree we are going to discuss this, and this is when. But too many times in arguments, I just can't talk about it now. And you leave or you walk out the room and you just don't talk about it. And then that issue becomes a major conflict, and it becomes that big bump under the rug that becomes eventually becomes a wedge in a relationship. And over time, you keep pushing more and more things on the rug, and you create a wall between husband and wife. So the rules of engagement are very important because it's about fighting fair. It's about we have to have a discussion. We have to resolve this issue, but we want to do it in a very healthy way where we're not triggering each other. And when you don't trigger each other, then you can have a healthy discussion.
And if you like this video and this episode, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share with others so more crisis-centered leaders have the opportunity to consume this type of valuable content. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can click on the screen to go to the next business growth videos, and I will see you in the next episode.